Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Logicbroker's webinar on holiday planning amidst supply chain issues. I'm Steve Norris, Vice President of Digital Commerce at Logicbroker. I've spent over 20 plus years in the e-commerce and supply chain technology space. Excited to talk to you guys today about how to deal with tariffs and supply chain issues during this holiday season. And I'm excited to invite Robert Schussler to participate in our webinar today. Robert, would you introduce yourself to the group?
Thanks, Steve. And hi, everyone. Robert Schussler here, Senior Solutions Engineer with Logicbroker. And I'm excited to be part of today's conversation. Over the years, I've worked closely with retailers to help them improve how they engage with customers and meet rising expectations, especially when it comes to fulfillment, flexibility, and responsiveness. From scaling dropship programs to tackling supply chain challenges like tariffs and delays, I've seen firsthand how the right strategy can turn complexity into competitive advantage. And what I love most about this work is helping teams stay one step ahead, not just in how they move product, but in how they deliver better experiences. So today, I'm here to share what most prepared retailers are doing to stay agile and customer ready heading into this year's holiday season.
Well, it does seem odd that we're talking about the holidays in June, but it seems like those holidays are starting even earlier every year. Robert, what have you been seeing in your 15 plus years in e-commerce and supply chain and retail around the holiday season?
Steve, over the years, I've watched the holiday season evolve from a sprint that started on Black Friday into a marathon that kicks off even before Halloween. We used to talk about Cyber Monday like it was the main event, but now we're seeing peak sales as early as the first week of November. And one thing that hasn't changed, though, it's the importance of this season. Nearly 40% of annual retail revenue is still concentrated between Black Friday and Christmas Eve. But the way consumers shop and the way retailers need to prepare, well, that's what's changed and pretty dramatically. So what I'm seeing more and more is retailers who win the holiday season aren't just launching campaigns, they're actually running playbooks. They've secured inventory, they've vetted suppliers, and they've simulated pricing models, all even before October. And the key takeaway, it's that the holiday window isn't just earlier, it's actually more compressed, more competitive, and way more unforgiving if you're caught flat-footed.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is you're starting to see, like Robert, like you mentioned, you're starting to see holidays creep forward quite a bit, right? Like it feels like if you walk into a Costco, you see the Christmas tree right next to the Halloween costumes now, right? And I think as we start to get into this year and we look at what worked and didn't work last holiday season, we got to keep in mind that actually this year, the holiday season has less selling days. So Thanksgiving is later this year. So there's actually less selling days between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So I would expect that we'll see some retailers launching something that looks kind of like a Black Friday in October event, right? But Robert, curious, what did you see last year in the holiday season that might give us a little bit of a idea about what's going to happen this holiday season?
Yeah, well, look, you can see here in the Schussler household, we're already celebrating Christmas in July. But really, what we saw last year, it was really around timing. 62% of consumers shop before Thanksgiving, and that's a significant shift. We've, again, moved from this idea of a Cyber Monday into really a Cyber October. And that early behavior means that inventory campaigns and supplier relationships all need to be locked in even sooner. Second, as e-commerce is going to continue to dominate over the holidays, we see over a third of all holiday purchases happening online. And that tells us that digital convenience isn't just a bonus, it's actually the baseline right now. And if your infrastructure isn't optimized for speed and scale, you're leaving revenue on the table. And next, we have category demand, where we're looking at some of the top categories like electronics and apparel. And I know, Steve, you've thought about this quite a bit. With these categories, what do you think is going to happen for 2025?
I think it'll be interesting to keep an eye on these top categories. I think like electronics, you generally see are pretty popular every year during the holiday season. It would make sense that apparel last year was very popular. I mean, you generally saw people like Shein and Temu kind of go almost to the moon from a evaluation perspective selling apparel. But it'll be really interesting to see how that changes this year with the tariffs in place, given that both electronics and apparel tend to be high tariff items. So I'll be keeping an eye on that pretty closely. Last holiday season, we saw a lot of people being concerned about inflation. While that's tend to be a little bit more moderated right now, there is like this overarching concept of tariffs that I think will maybe put some pressure on the consumer. What'll be really interesting is to follow along with what happens in July. So July, we have like a whole month of discounting, right? We have Amazon Prime Day, we have Target Circle Week, we have TikTok Shop Deal Days, we have corresponding events at places like Walmart, right? So it'll be really interesting. I think the results that come out of July will give us a better picture of what we think is going to happen this holiday, what's going to happen this holiday season. I think, one of the things that we're starting to see around tariffs is, though the tariffs were lifted for a little bit as a part of the Trump administration policy to relax those until July 9th. And we're seeing some movement there, which I think kind of feels positive, right? It feels like there's deals being struck up with the European Union from a trade perspective. It feels like there's a framework in place with China, but I think if we've learned anything over the last 10 years or so, it's to kind of expect and make sure we're prepared for uncertainty, right? While we are still seeing across our customer base and retailers and brands that we've been talking to, we're still hearing about shipping delays, right? Robert, as you know, they recently dropped some of the de minimis laws, which is now requiring a lot of products that are coming into the US to go through more customs scrutiny. And we're seeing more products getting caught up in that area, which could be risky as we head into that holiday season.
Yeah, certainly. Retail 101 is you want as few delays and fingers and touch points on goods as you move them through the supply chain to your customer. And this is just creating one more touch point where all these products coming in are, being delayed because they have to go through customs processes that previously didn't really apply.
If we see these tariffs snap back in July or at some time here later this year, that's going to have a big impact on the holiday season for most retailers and brands, right? What we suspect is going to happen there, and we saw in the 145% China tariff rate, is you're going to see customer dissatisfaction mainly being driven because of delayed shipping, inventory availability, lack of inventory availability, and you're going to see some margin compression happening. Now, I don't say this to scare people, really. The reason I'm saying this is in these times of uncertainty, like we saw during the 2008, 2009 housing crisis or during the COVID pandemic, this uncertainty gives an advantage to those folks that maybe aren't the biggest brands, but are the most prepared, right? It's times like these where organizations can either gain market share very quick or they can lose market share very quick. One of the things that we heard and read from an Avalara survey was that polled retailers and brands about their level and what they've done around tariff preparedness for the holidays. Alarmingly, 55% of those respondents said that they have done no additional planning and have made no changes to their business to accommodate for their current situation. So we wanted to be able to share with you, and I'll ask Robert to talk a little bit about this. If you have not prepared for this holiday season, you're a little late to the game, but we want to tell you a few things that you could be doing now in order to be able to put yourself in a better position as more and more customers are coming to your site as an uptick for the holiday season.
Yeah. So Steve, spot on. It was really the retailers that were able to adjust during, COVID, and have the flexibility to meet customers where they were shopping. And again, we're seeing kind of similar, where the retailers that are planning for resilience through readiness are the ones that are going to be really successful this holiday season. With these tariffs reappearing on the radar and global shipping still really tight, it's those brands that focus in on being prepared that are going to outperform. And to break it down, if we look at things like mapping supplier risk by geography, right? If you haven't already analyzed your supplier footprint by tariff exposure, this is step one, and we recommend, getting on it right away. It's not just about where your goods are made, it's about where the risk lives. So second, you're going to want to identify alternate suppliers in low tariff regions. So places like Southeast Asia, Latin America, and even nearshore options in Mexico are becoming more important than ever. And the goal here is agility. Don't get caught dependent on one region, because that could suddenly cost you more. Some other things you could do, implementing rapid onboarding workflows. So this is where a lot of retailers are going to stumble. They find a great new supplier, and then it takes 6 weeks to integrate them. If you can't move fast, you're not that agile. And finally, you want to track your landed costs in real time. So things like tariff, fuel surcharges, and fulfillment fees, they're all super dynamic right now. Everything's changing. And if you're relying on last quarter's estimates, your margins are probably already off. So the bottom line is that early readiness isn't just a best practice. In 2025, it's your competitive advantage. If you wait until October to do this, you're going to be watching your competitors ship faster and discount smarter while you're still trying to catch up.
I think what's really important in all of this, Robert, is you can go through all of these preparedness items and be super prepared. But if you don't have the technology to be able to support this, you're going to have a problem, right? Your technology should be working for you and not the other way around. So if you can't onboard a supplier in days, right? Just like Robert had mentioned, be really important to identify alternative suppliers and be able to onboard them quickly. If it takes you 6 weeks or it takes you 6 months to onboard a supplier, you've already lost the opportunity. Those are sales that you lost during the holiday season. That is revenue that's not coming into the door for your business. If you're not tracking real-time changes to the costs of the products that you sell, you're not putting yourself in a position of advantage, right? If your pricing algorithms aren't set up in real time, aren't ready, aren't bulletproof, right? Then you're putting yourself in a position where either you're pricing the products way too high and you've essentially removed the customer demand, or the price is set so low that you see margin erosion, or maybe you're even taking losses out of selling the product. You also want to think about, is your supplier and product content available in one unified solution? Right? You want to be able to quickly and easily be able to see changes that are happening to costs of product and inventory availability alongside of your demand signals and your supply signals, so that you can get a holistic picture of how things are changing and evolving in your organization in real time, so you can make pinpoint changes, whether that's in July in preparation for your holiday season, or mid-holiday season when you see, oh my God, this very in-demand product is out of stock and I need to find like or similar products. You need to be able to move at the drop of a dime. And you need to be able to pivot your inventory strategy, right? We talked a little bit earlier about how the worst thing that could possibly happen is you buy a ton of highly tariff-laden products and they sit on a shelf, they sit on the warehouse floor or up in a bin or a rack, and you go and look at it a month later and there is 6 inches of dust on it, right? You want to be able to very quickly and easily be able to say, hey, these are products I want to bring into inventory because they're fast movers. I can get maybe some better operational margins off of those products, then and move some of those slower movers that might be just as important to your customers and making them happy and the reason they're coming to see you every day. But you don't need pallets worth or racks worth of those products. You can move them out the drop ship and you can move quickly to make sure you're always having the products that your customers desire and they're always available and in stock.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about the opportunity. Because if the last few years taught us anything, it's that supply chain resilience is no longer optional. It's really an imperative. And first, if you think about diversifying suppliers by region, for many years, retailers were concentrated in a handful of sourcing zones, most notably China. But now, brands are de-risking. And as we said earlier, you can expand into Southeast Asia, Latin America, or even nearshore partners like Mexico, for example. And that not only helps you sidestep tariffs, but also gets you closer to where your customer is. And second, we're seeing smarter use of infrastructure. So especially things like bonded warehouses and free trade zones, these are powerful tools to defer duties and buy time in customs, which is huge when agility is the name of the game. And third, it's all about balancing cost, risk, and fulfillment flexibility. You don't want to be the brand with the cheapest supplier that can't deliver, but you also don't want to be the one with premium fulfillment that destroys your margin. So really focus on that balance. It's going to be key. And sourcing isn't just procurement anymore, it's really strategic positioning. And the brands that build sourcing optionality now are the ones who will be able to pivot, respond, and win when the market shifts.
And when you think about, and Robert, I love what you said there about sourcing, right? And it not being a procurement activity. It's very much a strategic lever for the business. We've seen this across many large retailers that have balanced this throughout the years, whether that's in times of uncertainty or times in stability, right? What we're seeing a lot of as organizations prepare themselves for this holiday season is one, them leveraging drop shipping as a way of being able to extend their assortment without taking that inventory risk, right? And testing and learning with new products or backstopping inventory of products that are coming out of highly tariffed regions. I was meeting with a retailer this week that was trying to figure out how they were going to handle their baby category, right? What our webinar attendees may not know is in that particular baby category, in certain areas, over 99% of these baby products are manufactured actually in China, right? And an average parent spends in the first year of a baby being in their lives about $20,000. That price has gone up over the last 6 months by about 30%, which is really pretty incredible. But they are looking for ways to find suppliers here in the US so that they can make sure that their products are competitively priced that they offer. And they offer those through a dropship model, right? There's many brands that we're working with that are trying to find new sales channels to participate. And these aren't just kind of like the common marketplaces like the Amazons and the Walmarts of the world, right? These are channels that are more in that kind of social selling lens as they look to attract a younger demographic through TikTok Shop, or they're looking to find customers where they're doing their research on some of these LLMs. We're starting to see organizations, whether the retailers or brands, start to try to meet their customers or new audiences where they're at and not necessarily make them come to them. And then lastly, we're seeing organizations adopt a strategy that is more refined around the expectations around drop shipping and wholesale procurement and making sure that those are models that work together and don't work completely separate of each other, right? So we're seeing a lot of teams that may have had a drop shipping team and a wholesale buying team. We're seeing those teams come together to really offer that omni-channel experience so that what's happening online is happening in the store, what's happening in the store is happening online, and what's happening online on their D2C site is similar to what's happening across some of these other marketplaces. So we've seen quite a bit in that space where organizations are trying to be more dynamic and thinking more creatively about establishing new sales channels, along with establishing higher profitability and better margins throughout their supply chain. But as organizations think about evolving, right, they got a really hard decision to make in this new kind of tariff world, right? They got to think about, are they going to absorb some of the cost of tariffs? Are they going to get passed along to their customers? Like, what happens to that, right? Robert, I think
Yeah.
you've seen some things that are kind of unique in that space.
It's really the elephant in the room. We have to address the fact that tariffs are here, right? And what do? Do you absorb them? Do you pass them on to your customers? Well, actually, the right solution is not one or the other. It's a combination of the two. Because for your customer, it's all about perception. So you may have some SKUs that have very slim margins, and customers, and they're very low price points already, and customers would not necessarily be willing to pay more for that particular SKU. And so what smart retailers are doing is they're actually bundling those products with higher margin SKUs so they can absorb a bit of that cost, and do it in a way where they're still creating perceived value for the customer by selling them a bundle. And then on the other hand, you may have some SKUs where customers might be willing to pay a little more for it. So this is really where your pricing strategy comes into play, and understanding what your customers might be willing to spend so that you can increase to on those particular SKUs. So again, not really one or the other. It's going to be a combination of the two that's going to create that perception for your customers that's going to keep them shopping with you.
And I think we're already seeing this today as a consumer, right? This weekend, I was looking for a pizza oven. So I was looking at a couple of pizza oven manufacturers' sites, and I stumbled across one that was offering a July 4th sale, right? And when I looked at those, it was interesting because they were offering a 20% off promotion, but the promotion only applied to the bundles. So I think some people are taking your advice here already, Robert, and have already figured out how to get more creative about bundling in order to make sure that they're retaining or maybe exceeding some of their margin expectations. Robert, you work very closely with our customers. One of the customers you're pretty close with is Barbecue Guys. Maybe you could share with the attendees today a little bit about what Barbecue Guys is doing to put themselves in the best position for the holidays, knowing that they have multiple holidays that they celebrate.
Yeah, and before I do that, I have to be completely transparent right here. You just reminded me I may have eaten an entire pizza for lunch today. So yeah, thanks for making me feel a little bit of the guilt. But for Barbecue Guys, we'll talk about them as a real success with Logicbroker. They came to us looking to protect their margins and stay flexible across a supply chain that's getting more unpredictable by the day. And their challenge was something many retailers face. How do you pivot from wholesale to dropship without actually breaking fulfillment or customer experience or even your margin structure? So with Logicbroker, they were able to streamline their dropship operations, onboard suppliers quickly, and most importantly, unify their data so they weren't just reacting to disruptions in their supply chain, they're actually proactively planning around those disruptions. And the result they saw last year was a strong holiday performance, happier customers, and a flexible model that gives them long-term confidence year-round. And speaking of year-round, here's one tip. Keep your eye on the 4th of July. It's one of the biggest grilling holidays of the year, and for Barbecue Guys, it's a critical demand signal. So if their orders spike and fulfillment runs smooth over that July 4th weekend, it's a strong early indicator that your sourcing, supplier readiness, and logistic workflows it's going to be more critical for them to be aligned going into the peak season. And so for any of you in seasonal or category-driven retail, take your summer performance seriously, because it's often a dress rehearsal for Black Friday and beyond.
Man, a whole pizza, Robert. I can feel the heartburn from here. But as we end, we wanted to make sure you guys had 5 things that you could kind of take away immediately from this meeting that didn't require a bunch of technology lift or things that you could be able to just take back and immediately put in place. One of those things is you should start supplier onboarding now. In some ways, depending on where that supplier is located and whether wholesale or drop ship, you may already be behind. But this would give you the ability to be able to start establishing that supply chain resiliency that Robert mentioned. You should also be very diligent right now about understanding what is your real margin at a SKU level for the products that you have today. Because if you don't know that, you're at risk of potentially not hitting your margin targets for the year and for the holiday season, right? Because as costs continue to change and continue to rise, you'll likely be expected to achieve similar margin results, and you'll want to know what those need to look like. And to add on top of that, what you should think about doing is playing out in those products various different tariff scenarios based on the product and where those products are manufactured. This doesn't have to be super complex. You can pull up trusty Excel and put this into a spreadsheet, but you should definitely understand the risk that you have across at least your top selling products so that you can make yourself sure that you are in the best position to be successful this holiday season.
And Steve, we talked about it earlier, but not just for holidays, but for year round. And it's critical to have a holistic view of your supply chain, product, and pricing data so that you can make smarter data-driven decisions and protect yourself against the uncertainty that we face in today's market. And along with that, just focus in on the holidays. It's never too early to start creating your customer communication playbook. Make sure that you have, succinct, clear, focused messaging to reach your customers where they are, so that you are most prepared for this upcoming holiday season.
If anybody has any questions, they can feel free to put those in the chat or in the Q&A. We're happy to answer those. And if you'd rather not put anything in the chat, would rather reach out to us directly, feel free to reach out to us. Logicbroker would love to help you understand your readiness for the holiday season and your tariff preparedness. We can do that on a one-on-one manner if you want to reach out to marketing@logicbroker.com. And we would also encourage you to download the Logicbroker Tariff Playbook. So inside that playbook, you're going to see a lot of really good content that's going to allow you to be able to do a self-assessment of your holiday and tariff preparedness. And also inside of there, you're going to find a list of suppliers that are in low tariff regions that are interested in being able to be discovered by organizations like yourself in order to participate in the fulfillment programs that you have today. I want to thank everybody for joining. This has been a fantastic event with great attendance. And thank you, Robert, again for joining. We'll have a webinar again next month that'll be on the topic of establishing a profitable dropship program. So I hope I see you guys there. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.